And so Gaia, the Earth Mother, and Uranus, the Sky Father, who is the Earth Mother's son, begin to produce these ugly children, the Hecatonchires, the Hundred-Handers, the Cyclopes, the big scary monsters. But then Gaia and Uranus begin to mingle again and begin to produce the Titans. Now the Titans are good-looking children. They're handsome or beautiful, but Uranus won't allow them to be born. Here we have another family tree. I'm not going to work our way through it because, well, it's not a very interesting family tree, not too many branches. But the Hecatonchires, Hundred-Handers, are born. They're sent to the underworld. The Cyclopes are born. They're sent to the underworld. The Titans, as they're born, Uranus crams them back into Gaia, won't allow them to be born, and eventually Gaia becomes ticked off. Okay. Now, there's something that you may not have run into before, although probably most of you have, and that is mothers. Mothers tend to have a maternal killing instinct. Okay. Fathers have it too, but it's a little different killing instinct. Paternal killing instinct will usually just kill somebody, all right? The maternal killing instinct, though, starts off with, throwing cars across the parking lot, all right? Whether we're talking about mother bears or mother humans, there's this maternal killing instinct, all right? And Gaia has it in a big way, all right? Uranus has sent her first children down to the underworld. She produces the Cyclopes. He sends them down to the underworld. And now she has 12 growing children inside her womb that Uranus won't let out. Well, Gaia finally has had enough. And she calls out to the Titans, the Titan children who are growing within her womb. And she calls out to them, to all 12 of them. She says, there's the 12 again. She calls out to them, who among you will avenge your brother and sisters? Who will take vengeance on your fathers? Who has sent your Hecatonchire brothers and sisters down to the underworld? Who has banished your Cyclopes children down to the underworld and will not allow any of you to be born? And she starts working down the list of the oldest to the youngest. And the oldest says, no, not me. I'm not going to do it. The second oldest says, no, not me either. I'm not going to mess with Dad. The fourth one says, no, not me either. Fifth one finally gets down to the youngest, a Titan named Cronus. And finally Cronus says, I will do it. I will avenge my brother and sister Hecatonchires and Cyclopes and all my Titan brothers and sisters. Now Cronus enters the picture. The Romans called him Saturn. That's why you see the L for Latin there. The Romans call him Saturn. Cronus says, I will avenge my brothers and sisters and take vengeance upon my father. Gaia, the Earth Mother, fashions out of her body a scythe. I'll be posting a YouTube of someone else using a scythe. On the screen you see a picture of a scythe. You don't ordinarily see them today outside of, on the walls of barbecue joints or something. Every once in a while I'll have a student who says, yeah, I have my grandparents have one and I've seen them use it. That's pretty impressive. I'll post a video for those of you who've never seen a scythe in action. But anyway, Gaia forms a scythe out of the stones within her own body, a particular type of metal, in fact, adamantine. You see that word on the screen. We're going to be talking about adamantine off and on for the rest of the semester. It's a mythical metal which is stronger than anything you can imagine. It's like a crystalline metal. It's like a cross between tungsten, steel, and diamonds. It's like the hardest, most durable, sharpest mineral that you can find, okay? And well, Gaia forms one of these scythes out of her own body, out of the metal that lies within her own body. And all I'm doing is telling you the story. She sneaks it into her womb, okay? Cronus takes the scythe. He takes the scythe and he sneaks into his mother's vagina. And I'm just telling you the story here, okay? He sneaks into his mother's vagina, and Uranus, the Sky Father, approaches Gaia again for this erotic mingling, and at the crucial time, Cronus leans out of his mother's vagina with the scythe and castrates his father Uranus. You knew that was coming, didn't you? You knew that was coming. If some of you were already cringing as soon as you saw the scythe, you know, I mentioned Freud as an interpretive theory, or interpretive theorist. Freud is Freudian theory as a means of interpreting some myths. If you wanted a myth where Freud fits perfectly, this is it. I'm not sure there are all that many more, but this one is it. Okay, the overbearing father who is tormenting the mother and tormenting the children, and finally a son takes revenge on the father by castrating the father. Oh boy. Okay. Well, this is pure Freud. Freud fits this one. I'm not sure he fits a lot of other ones, but he fits this one. Anyway, you may remember from the first day of class that at this point, Cronus's testicles fall out of the sky. Uranus's testicles fall out of the sky. Uranus recoils in pain all the way back up to where the sky is supposed to be. Uranus's testicles, fall into the ocean, where the semen sets off a sea foam reaction, and Aphrodite is born. We'll get to Aphrodite in a little bit, an anthropomorphic projection of eros, erotic desire. Well, Cronus becomes associated with time, like chronology. A chronometer is a fancy word for a watch. Cronus becomes associated with time, and that's why every new year you see Father Time depicted with a scythe, and I've got 3 examples, usually with a clock or an hourglass. So when we get close to New Year's, after the end of this semester, you'll see a depiction somewhere of Father Time carrying a scythe, and now you'll know why, because Cronus used a scythe to castrate his father. Well, Uranus doesn't disappear, he doesn't go away, you can't get rid of the sky, but Uranus and Gaia kind of fall out of the story. They'll pop back in every once in a while, but pretty much fall out of the story. That's Aphrodite, who's born, you can see in the sea, out of the sea foam. You may be able to make out the sea foam down here that is carrying her to shore. Aphrodite, the Romans call her Venus. I mentioned her already to you. We'll be talking about her in much more detail as we go through. Also, as a result of Aphrodite being born, some other spiritual beings are born out of Uranus's semen as they strike the ocean. These are called the Furies. They're not very nice creatures. We'll get to the Furies later. In fact, it's not a big deal at this point. Don't bother worrying too much about the Furies. Not at this point. Well, Cronus becomes the new boss of the Titans. Although he's the youngest, he's the one who took the mantle of vengeance and took vengeance on his father Uranus. He'll marry his sister Rhea, and Cronus will become a slightly more anthropomorphic sky god. Rhea will become a slightly more anthropomorphic earth goddess. Okay, and we enter into the second Hieros Gamos, the second of these sacred marriages between a sky god, Cronus, and an earth god, Rhea, who are slightly more anthropomorphic than earth and sky that we saw with Gaia and Uranus. Well, Cronus and Rhea mingle in love. In fact, by this point, I think we can say they have sex. They're that anthropomorphic. They just have sex. But Saturn, Cronus, remember the Romans called him Saturn, will eat his children. He and Rhea will conceive children. Rhea will give birth, but as soon as the children are born, Cronus, Saturn, will eat the children. Cronus remembers what his children did to him. What he did to his father. Sorry about that. He remembers what he did to his father. He doesn't want his children to do to him what he did to his father. And so as the children are born, he eats them. This goes on for, I forget how many children that Rhea gives birth to. But finally, Rhea has enough of this. This, by the way, is a painting by a famous Spanish romantic painter, Francisco Goya, Saturn devouring his children. And there you see the image of Cronus, of Saturn, eating the children who are born to Rhea. Well, finally, Rhea conceives a child, and this child is going to grow up and become Zeus. The Romans call him Jupiter, and we'll talk about how the Greek gods became Roman gods at a later point. But Rhea decides to play a trick on Cronus. Rhea gives birth to Zeus, but instead of wrapping Zeus in a blanket and presenting Zeus to his father Cronus, in which case Cronus will eat Zeus, Rhea plays a trick on Cronus and wraps a rock in a sheet and gives the rock to Cronus. And what do you think Cronus does? He eats the rock.